8 o'clock. We ready?
Yeah.
I'd like to,
Go ahead.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Public Health and Safety Standing Committee meeting of June 10th to order. And our first discussion is of the May 27th meeting minutes. Thank you so much, Ann. You're very welcome.
Can I throw in just a quick announcement for those folks
Sure.
who are online? And so that you guys know, our internet has been bouncing up and down, so if we have folks that are online and we lose you, please jump back in and we'll try to notice and get it turned on. But for folks watching the recording and stuff as well, if we lose it halfway through, they'll understand we're experiencing technical difficulties today.
Okay. I thought the minutes were good. Did you have any comments? So that means that a vote, right here, ayes or nays?
Move to approve.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Update from Police Chief Schrock.
Well, over the, weekend with the Renaissance Festival, there was a total of, within the times of the festival, there was 38 calls for service, none of which were criminal. They all involved traffic, so no issues. Traffic flow was a far cry from what it was the year before. No issues there, no traffic jams.
What was the difference?
The,
Having more organization?
the traffic light in Joliet.
Yeah, the traffic light in Joliet.
What?
Mm-hmm.
They're working on the bridge in Joliet.
So it spaces everybody out?
It broke up the traffic flow in groups of, I'd say, probably 30 to 40.
Wow.
And,
Who knew?
Traffic was backed up all the way through Joliet,
I heard that.
yeah.
but that broke it up for us.
Yeah, I spoke to the sheriff, and he said that traffic was backed up, but again, that's just the way it is.
It wasn't our fault.
Yeah, it wasn't our fault, and there was no major issues. It wasn't our fault last year either. There was no major issues caused by the traffic jam in Joliet.
The other issue you had is you had 25 people doing parking rather than one.
So everyone showed up this year, like they said they were gonna show up last year, but they didn't, but they did this year.
It was a different group.
Oh, the Beartooth Humane Alliance, right?
Yeah,
The Humane Alliance was, here. I saw the mayor out there directing, parking.
Thank you.
They, yeah, and then they also had additional parking open, so that parking on the south end of the airport, that was half south end,
Yes.
uphill. It's all right, it takes
There was a
40 years
sign out there.
apparently, yeah. That probably didn't hold maybe a third or a half, but that was a huge amount of additional parking that made a significant difference. And the fact that they were feeding two of them at one time and you could toggle traffic back and forth between them was helpful.
The Business Alliance meeting, said that they had 15,000 on Saturday.
Whoa.
Compared to 12,000 last year. So we actually had 3,000 more than the previous year.
Is there any anecdotal evidence that they were parking at the cemetery this year?
There was
Like
no
last
parking anyplace else.
Good.
Out along the roads. Yeah, last year they were everywhere, and
Yeah.
there was none of that this year at all.
I did not even, personally, I did not even see any overflow parking, in the golf course residential area.
Great, okay.
It worked very well. No major issues. Their staff was very easy to work with. Yeah, nothing major.
Well, we really do hope they come back next year.
Yeah, same.
I think this was their test year after
Yeah.
last year,
Sounds like
to say the least.
Sure.
I drove up there and it was just like clockwork. It was so impressive. I mean, it was just like an event. It was better than the Metro event. I mean, they handled it so well.
Yeah, it
It
was
was
great.
awesome, yeah. They were
Great.
super friendly too, and
They are. Their organizers are very proactive and, you know, they're very logistically, they're very, very sharp at what they're doing, and it works like a fine-tuned watch this year.
it really did,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Like experience both days.
Mhm.
Well, I think we'll wait on our FWP guy to come in. I had sent, Officer Langdon's suggestions on ordinances that needed to be, changed because they were old, and one of them was public intoxication, which we didn't have an ordinance. And according to Dennison, Montana code restricts the city from making it a criminal offense just for being intoxicated in public. It holds that a person who appears to be intoxicated in public does not commit a criminal offense solely by the reason of being in an intoxicated condition, but may be detained by a peace officer for the person's own protection.
Mhm.
However, any action taken by the intoxicated individual can be criminalized, such as disorderly conduct or being intoxicated and walking along the shoulder of a roadway. So we won't be, addressing anything on intoxication. And I think you guys have been handling it just fine.
Yeah.
And I would suspect that someone who is intoxicated will break some rule.
It depends. Depends. Not everybody that's intoxicated breaks the rules, but, there's issues with public intox and,
Yeah, it keeps going and
Sure.
going,
sure.
because sooner or later they have to go to the bathroom.
I was gonna, that's the first thing I was thinking of.
Well, there's that. That's covered by state code for enforcement, but, yeah, there are times where intoxicated pedestrians will cause problems, and even though there's not quite a criminal charge, because they're not obstructing traffic or anything like that, they continue to be a problem for the remainder of the shift.
Keep on giving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, as long as we're,
No, well, let's stick to what the agenda says.
okay. Well, we all got a, email from our prior mayor, Kristen Cogswell, addressing, the bear issue. And has everybody had a chance to read through that? Transfer stations, I know that they do work in some places. I've actually lived in a town that had transfer stations, and we didn't have bears. But what we would do is, every time we had a bag of trash, we didn't run to the transfer station, we put it in our garage. And then when we had a really good load, then we would go to the transfer station. And here, I know of one instance that somebody put their trash in the garage, and it was one bag. And when they came back the next morning, the, siding on the garage had been ripped off. So, how does everybody feel about transfer stations here? Ann, you go first.
Well, she suggested a recycling center, which would be way too small for that. At this juncture, I don't think I'd want to pursue it, I guess is my point. I think recycling, the, pickup is fine. If the education is lacking, maybe, with so many short-term rentals that, and people need to, people are reluctant to talk to their neighbors about their trash. And when they
Heads up.
when they see it lit up, or,
Thank you.
it's just, I think it's an education and respect issue more than anything else. And if anybody has a better idea about location, but the recycling center is way too small for, something like that. So, but that's the only place she mentioned,
And I know in short-term rentals, the ones that are professionally managed are extremely well-managed for their trash. I know that I heard of a guy who's been feeding the deer, actually has a trough full of food for the deer, and so he can watch the deer. And then he saw a bear come along and, kill a fawn who was feeding at the trough for the deer. So we still have people in town who feed the animals. And you can educate till you turn blue. They know what they're doing is against the rules, but they do it because they want to. We don't,
I think feeding birds in town is,
also.
reading the ordinances, and so who's gonna go out there and stop people from buying bird feed?
no one I know. And, yeah, so it might, now that we've tried education, maybe we should start thinking about the stick that goes with the education, which is actually fining people.
I think I'd be a great enforcement officer.
Yeah.
I really do.
You would.
I ride around my little Ranger and just
You
kick
want another
ass.
job? I guess not.
We'll keep wrangling her, and we'll
What
get her.
what I'm saying is, we do need to start
Fining people.
finding.
I think if you hit them in their wallet, and make it, you know, somewhere between, I think, the minimum $100. I think $50 isn't painful enough. Those that are doing it are habitual.
Well, that topic is almost for,
Another day.
I just, thank you,
Well, I'm here, I'll give you another.
thanks.
And this is,
So this is me trying to move us forward a little bit as we're kind of going around in circles. I'm actually handing out a couple of different things. The first one is our two ordinances that we have, our municipal code rather. What I'm handing out now is actually the ordinances. So we keep talking about, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna make two passes. We keep having the 941 amended. So here's 941, I got one more for you. Oh, 2 pages. So one of the problems is, as we do this, we can't be, if we're 941, it's actually the same title and the same gist and the same guts, and I think we're actually changing it. So I think what we're gonna end up having is a new ordinance that's really not gonna be a 941.
it's gonna be its own.
It's gonna be its own ordinance because we're changing something. But then the other thing on that, so part of it is, so when I said, anytime when I was on council and I got bogged down, I was kind of back to this decision-making tree. And I heard some things in here, although, did I just hand somebody a copy that has my handwriting on it?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
There was, I started to write down, because I heard enforcement, you know, education and enforcement. So it's just kind of like, what are we trying to solve by doing this ordinance? And I did fill those two, but it's like, we're trying to solve litter from blowing trash, which is where the whole dumpsters conversation came from. But then we're also trying to stop human-bear conflicts and simultaneously with that, stop having to put bears down. To me, it's kind of like protect yourself, protect the bears is kind of our education thing. And then I wanted to just sit down and say, so what are we gonna do? And you're kind of going down there where you're saying, hey, we need to have a fine, but I had just put this down to kind of look at it and say, are we getting closer? I have one that came out on, oh, does everybody else only get one side too? Maybe I didn't. The decision-making, there's a second page, and I thought I saw it on the back of one page, but,
I don't have one
I
page
have
of
this,
decision.
which appears to be a half a page.
yeah, okay, that's the second one that goes with the first half of the
Okay, there.
decision-making, which is a
You have
blank.
both.
You may not have that. How about this? Do you have
Oh, I
that
don't
one?
have the front page for that.
You don't have a front page?
You have a back but not a
I have
front?
it back, yeah.
There's a front,
Thank
sorry.
you. That's okay.
Do you have a front?
Thank
I
you.
adopted.
I have a set.
Okay. Do you have both pages of the
Here's the back.
decision-making? I don't know, something must have got dropped or something. So let's
Hit the button.
figure out the what's of it, and then the language of it'll come later, right? But what is it we're gonna do to fix it? And,
And honestly, is it fixable? It's reducible, but not, I don't think it's gonna, my personal opinion is that it's not fixable, but we can reduce it.
so if our goal is to reduce it, then that's okay, we can change that to there. What is the main argument opposed to this action? Somebody had put forth that get a transfer station instead. You guys have talked a little bit about that. So you said, does it address it? It reduces but doesn't resolve completely.
It's always going to be, an educational thing as people are moving into town.
So education is ongoing. Okay.
So, we know that litter from blowing trash was addressed or tried to be addressed in the amended 941. So I think that's a start. But the human-bear conflicts, give me an instance of a human-bear conflict.
Last week, the sow that got put down charged somebody that day, that morning.
And they were out putting their trash out, or just,
They were just out in their yard. She charged somebody. I would call that a human-bear conflict.
was it because of trash?
Just two cubs,
It was a bear and,
protecting cubs.
She was
Yeah.
protecting cubs. That goes back to my question, was it because of trash?
there was, well, I would say that it was because of trash because she was in town for a reason.
They live here
Why did they live here?
because of the waterway and the food, I mean.
And the food, yeah, because that particular one was, she had gone down and knocked over several cans. So they had several days of her going down and knocking down cans that were not locked.
What area of town was this?
Over on Grant, isn't it?
It was actually right next to, the house that got charged was across the street, from the previous mayor on 19th. So it was over on that southwest side of town,
Gotcha. So, off of White,
yes,
got it, okay,
White 19th.
okay.
I think it stems from the fact that she was taught as a cub that garbage cans were a source of food, and she was teaching her new cubs the same thing. So it goes back to
Big blue
securing
lunchboxes.
trash, not, so the bears don't learn
Yeah.
that garbage cans are a food source.
But you were asking what the conflict was. I mean, that was a very real, literal conflict.
That really was a real conflict, yes. But that's why I was asking, was she protecting her cubs, or was it the guy was putting trash in the trash can and the sow came along?
I don't know specifically what he was doing at the time.
And that's where I was going with this, is
Yeah.
to always blame trash. I mean, I know that the trash cans, the little latch on it needs to be WD-40'd every occasionally. Mine doesn't, when I put the lid down, it doesn't shut, so I have to go under and open it. So, the trash cans themselves don't automatically lock when you put the lid down after a while.
Mine's broken, and
Is yours the
the
same
one
way?
at work is broken too, yeah.
Yeah, so
I've tried to
I
replace
think that's a problem. I know my
Okay.
husband doesn't latch it because he thinks he latched it, but he
Mhm.
didn't. You know, so, I think the latches on the cans are a problem. I mean, ever since I moved here, they see them as big blue lunch boxes. And these cans are much better than the ones that were before, to say the least. Having the cans knocked over is one thing, having the cans knocked over and opened is the issue.
Okay?
If they can't get in them, then after a while, they'll stop trying. But can we reach 100%? No.
I've seen the number of bears within the downtown area greatly reduced over the last 18 years. When I first started, especially during nighttime, you couldn't drive down in, 2 or 3 hours without at least seeing one.
Mhm.
Now it's rare to see one, in my opinion.
Yeah. And didn't you guys use rubber bullets or something to
We did,
discourage them?
we did.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore.
And
That's
see, my
what
can,
FWP does.
my can hasn't been on its side in at least 2 years, and I'm over by the creek.
Yeah, I would say it's thanks to the garbage cans specifically, because I think when I started here, it was just blue, regular,
Oh.
flip-top
Mhm.
trash
And the
cans.
trash guy taught me how to drill a hole in the top, get a big, heavy-duty black bungee, hook it on the handle, and put it through the hole.
Yeah,
And that, I'm telling you, those bears would knock it up and down the alley and jump all over it, and they
Yeah.
couldn't get to it.
So I've got a couple of things that are written down as far as proactive, and this is some stuff we're doing separately from what we can do from a regulatory side. So they're gonna be going through and doing an inventory and checking to see, make sure cans are opening and closing and stuff. And that's something we can do somewhat regularly and certainly at the beginning of the year. But from a city side, from a council perspective, I look at it and even education is something that we can do from a citywide perspective in that group. But to me, the enforcement and what the rules are that they're enforcing is the stuff that falls squarely in here.
Right.
Is it gonna be a fine if you intentionally disable your trash can so it can't be closed?
Definitely.
I have a neighbor who puts tape on theirs.
Tape,
Duct tape, just so that the lock
Is it
doesn't
cut-
go in.
definitely should be a fine. They're doing that on purpose. Why not just leave the trash out?
Some
Did they-
neighbors do
did
that
they-
as well.
Did they say why they are disabling the lock?
It's a pain.
It's 'cause it
It's
takes,
not, it takes effort to open it when you have trash in your hands.
you have to put the trash down in order to open the can. So you can't walk up and just open the can. You have to put your trash bag down, reach under, open the top, then pick up your trash bag. So-
That is difficult.
I understand the concept, but that's where we live and that's how it works. And I would
really
say
want
that if
that
the trash
job.
company,
I really want that job, I'm not kidding.
we do need an
I
enforcement.
want to apply for that job. I
Swa-
would be so good at it.
The sworn officer?
Wait, we're gonna swear her in as an officer? No, I'm,
But, you know, you can't expect people to do the right thing unless you educate them. And so many new people are here, and they don't know, they honestly do not know. And it takes face-to-face, someone saying, hi, you're new, here's some things, and let me show you your garbage can, how it works.
Yeah,
Here's the deal.
I think
and we do have a volunteer group going around to do that can be part of that. So, and you could do that, that won't be a conflict, because that's not an employed position.
Well, maybe I should be an ad hoc member of that committee, because I think you can't, well, I didn't know. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people do know, and they say that, but you've gotta show them. You gotta show them how those garbage cans work.
Yeah, I know Jade and her sister with the Airbnb, they're pretty good on,
AAA.
yeah, AAA, they're really good at, with visitors, letting them know the do's and don'ts for, you know, people visiting, staying in a, you know, short term or something like that, they,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
There's some other things we've talked about in that committee, so, getting a QR code that we're gonna put on the trash cans that they can just scan and it'll show them how to open them and close them. So that's, I mean, that doesn't mean that you're not there, but they're going around, Mike has actually put together in our GIS software, an inventory that they're gonna go around, and do exactly what you're talking about.
You mean Public Works is gonna add one more thing to their job?
What they did is they created a tool that we can use to go around and track,
Oh.
because they have our GIS
Okay.
system.
Okay.
So it's just basically just a phone app, and that's already done, so.
There's also the possibility that we have 6 council members, 2 for each ward, 2,400 people in town, so 400 per person, that maybe we spend 2 Saturdays in 1 month and hit everybody in our ward.
Well, again, we've got a group that's going forth with that.
Is this the
But-
committee?
Yeah, that's the Bear Committee.
Got it.
But again, so what, right? So now we're going back to where you kind of started this, you think there needs to be a sticker, there needs to be a fine for it, or what does that language look like? What are you gonna say, this is against the rules? And we've got Dan here now too.
Good.
Sorry,
better late than never.
Sorry.
No problem.
Again, Fish and Game they issued citations for creating a bear attractant.
Well, we can only issue citations if we have evidence that a bear has accessed an attractant.
So it's an after the fact.
Yeah, we can't preemptively, we can give warnings, which I do, you know, when I have time, but, we don't have any teeth to those warnings unless we actually we have to have something like a picture of the trash thrown around and a bear track or a scat or something like that, and then we can issue fines.
So we need a preemptive.
So I heard disabling a can is a finable expense.
Totally.
And purposely feeding any animal, because just like in the case of this guy who thinks he's feeding the deer, it's actually an attractant for bears as well. And that there are still people in town that do that.
I believe that's a state law, isn't it?
What's that?
That's a state law.
Yeah,
You guys can cite on
I
that?
don't know which guy you're talking about, but if you're talking about,
Let's leave names out, but, yeah.
Over on that side of town?
Yeah, I guess I'll leave my finger at it too, but, yeah, if you're talking about the guy that I think of, I mean, he's been cited already, and it's just, there's gonna be a number of people that just aren't gonna care. And also, our citations, I wish Heaton was here so he could explain it better, but our citations have a limit of how high they can go, and it's not high, it's like $150 or something like that, so.
Well, I thought you guys were 1,000, the state one I thought was
I could be wrong.
$1,000.
I could be wrong,
but-
better question for Matt Heaton, but, some people just, I guess the point is, some people just aren't gonna listen to that one.
Can we cite on that state code?
Yeah, we have in the past.
So we don't need to create a new one for feeding animals.
No, I'll pull up, if you give me just a couple of seconds here, I'll pull up the Montana Supreme Court bond schedule and locate the code and give you the fine amount.
But there are a number of individuals in town that I know of that they don't care. They haven't cared if we've cited them. They just go, well, this is what I'm doing, and
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if they actually pay those citations?
If they don't, they have a warrant placed out for their arrest.
I would imagine so, but again, we're getting out of I'm not law enforcement, so it's getting out of my,
So they do get a warrant if they don't pay it?
Correct. If there's a state violation and they're cited for it and they don't make a court appearance, don't pay fines, the judge can, issue a warrant for their arrest. That's the standard with, you don't show up to court, that's a problem. Right.
What can we do as a city to eliminate the bear-human conflict?
well, a lot of the stuff that's been being done already, in the last, Dave, couple months, is gonna be, once we get it really rolling, that's gonna do a lot, as far as having more hands is the biggest problem. I can just go through a quick timeline, I got here in 2023, and what I was doing is I was working with Courtney then, and we were issuing warnings to people who were not properly securing their trash, and that was, what I had heard, I'll back up even a little bit further. When I got here, what I had heard is it's vacation rentals and it's user error. What I found is it wasn't always vacation rentals. In fact, it wasn't even the majority of them were vacation rentals. The majority were people that lived here full time. And it wasn't always user error. A lot of times the cans were not functional. And so what happened is by giving out these warnings, we had people calling livid. Well, my can hasn't been working for blah, blah, this amount of years. And we go, great, let's get it fixed. And then we get it fixed. They wouldn't get a fine. All of a sudden it was getting stored right. And there's a sense in the community that I noticed, that people just had given up. You know what, Republic's not gonna fix our cans, and what's the point? I'm just gonna keep doing it, the Bear's gonna get it, that's the way it is in Red Lodge. The other part is, and I'll just say, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks was not responding to the Bears as frequently as they have since I've been here. So these bears were getting out of hand, and a few of them are still running around. So I came here and I said, well, we're not gonna do this as a public safety threat. And so we started putting those bears down that were just extremely habituated and getting some of those cans fixed. And we saw some good progress in 2023. From 2023 to 2024, there was definite progress. But I was working strictly with Courtney, and once she left, some of that just kind of fell by the wayside. Unfortunately, I don't have the means to do that, because, I worked till 8 last night. I was late to this meeting, so this time of year, my reliability is out the window. So, it was easy with Courtney. I could snap pictures, somebody could send me a picture, and then she would put it in a spreadsheet, send a letter, that person would get mad, they'd call, boom, that the can would get fixed, whatever it was. But that kind of fell to the wayside. The next thing we need, which is what, Mary Dave's address, is we need more people to do, this can's tipped over, a bear's in it, this can's not functioning right. A big one is bird feeders. This sow that just got put down, she was, I wouldn't say primarily, because she was hitting trash primarily, but she loved bird feeders, and that's what made her a public safety threat, because it was bringing her right up to people's houses. And so people can have their trash stored all day, but if they have bird feeders there, it almost does no good. So I don't know what the city can do about that kind of stuff, but those are the issues, is cans either not working primarily, and stuff like bird feeders.
That's-
Pet food.
And I've seen some people put bird feeders way up, does that actually help?
Yeah, it's not necessarily that.
It gets their cardio in on the way to get the food.
Yeah, a lot of times.
They do climb trees, don't they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Feed can fall. There are ways to do bird feeders where, you know, but it takes a lot of thought and effort. You know, I've seen Don, well, we're not using names, outside of town, man that's got a lot of game cameras.
Oh, yeah.
He's put his bird feeder up on his rooftop, and there's, I mean, a bear theoretically could get it, but if a bear's getting it there, we got other
It
problems.
deserves
on our
it.
hands, you know.
So, I'm sorry, Aaron. No, go ahead.
Go.
There's two separate, there's same code, different subsections,
Right.
two separate charges for, bye, Patty. Montana Code annotated 87-6-216, section 1, subsection alpha and bravo. And it is purposely attracting, bears, mountain lions, or wild turkeys with feed attractants. And then, after warning, fail to properly store attractants. And then, third, there's three different subsections. Providing feed causing unnatural concentration of game animals. The recommended bond, including the surcharge, is $135 for a state citation. The maximum fine is $1,000. And it is not a must-appear citation. Max jail is 6 months. And that's what we got.
And that's the one I'm familiar with, because that's like the bird feeders. It's like initially, it's not a problem, but if you've been warned that it's an attractant, then the next time they can cite you on it.
And
Yeah.
evidence, there has to be evidence that the animal is accessing it, the deer, you know, like in this fellow's case with the deer. That's illegal, we know the deer are hitting it.
So setting up a surveillance operation
Yeah, you
to
have
make
to have a surveillance
It's
operation.
not so much, you know, putting the bird feeder, they say, oh, I bring it in at night, but the bird, it's all on the ground.
Yeah,
Birds
I mean,
aren't neat.
No.
yeah.
So it's ridiculous to say, well, I bring it in, I put it high up, it's all there.
Yeah, we could
It's
do a
like
meeting
taking
just
peanut
on
butter
bird,
out for a
just
bear.
on bird feeders, but the bringing it in at night is not.
Is there any successful, anecdotal town that's being successful about bird feeders, or is it just something we have to live with?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of town, I mean, Gardner, I'm blanking, there's a few towns that don't allow bird feeders.
Oh,
They have an ordinance against bird feeders during the
Against
summer
bird
months.
Feeders during the summer months.
cool.
Yep, and so they don't have to worry about it.
So is that something this council has an appetite for?
I'm fine with that.
It's huge. And I'm all for it, but, you know, I won't mention names, but there was a person in your world a few years ago, and he told me, he says, if I ever got a bad diagnosis, I'd go up and blow up the bird feed stores. And I agree. It's because, you know, birds don't
Yeah.
need bird feed. They have Mycotone asterbush to feed from.
Right.
But I just thought, I obviously never forgot that he said that. I'd blow them up.
Yeah, they kill bears. People do that in this town. Some people in some towns would go, well, let's throw more bird feeders up there if that's the case. But in our town, most people don't want bears to get killed. So if they knew that was the case, then they would, you'd think they'd take their bird feeders down. But surprisingly, I think it's hard for people to connect the dots from bird feed to dead bear.
So in all the notes, I wrote down, so I'm going back to solid waste that's here and kind of the A. I've heard two things. A, it shall be criminal or a fine or whatever to disable a can. We don't need to do purposely feeding wildlife because we've got the state 87-6-216 that does that. Not properly securing trash with attractants. I kind of added that in because you can put a bag of lawn clippings next to your can and it's not a problem. But if we say not properly securing, that would be they're not closing it, they're overfilling it, they're just throwing extra bags on the side. To me, that's kind of wide encompassing. Is there other variations of stuff that we're gonna say we fine people for if they don't do it, or they do it, or do those two things envelope catch it all?
I've seen people just use a regular trash can.
Yeah.
That would count as not properly securing. if it's an attractant.
Well, it has a lid, so they think, okay.
Yeah, I guess it depends properly securing how you have that sign in there. But like, I don't know, I'm driving around town lately and seeing that Republic's putting out dumpsters, regular dumpsters, right in the middle of town.
Right.
And so, I don't necessarily think that somebody needs to be fined for that, but why is that happening? That should never happen.
What type of dumpster? Like,
There's
unsecured?
one right down,
Like the state, like the city.
You're talking big dumpsters.
yeah, big dumpsters. Yeah,
And
not-
so our rule then on the dumpsters was no attractants in dumpsters. But again, that could kind of, not properly securing attractants.
Yeah.
We were trying to address dumpsters, saying that all dumpsters and trailers must have proper covers and be secure at the end of the day to protect against accidental dispersal of solid waste. Attractants must be stored in a bear-resistant dumpster and remain closed at all times when not being used to dispose of waste.
I don't have that in the latest version of,
You just handed it to me.
where does it say? Attractants. I remember that discussion, but I didn't see it here.
It's that paragraph E in yellow.
Oh, attractants must be, there it is.
So you're trying to differentiate between like construction dumpsters and,
Must be stored in a bear-resistant dumpster and remain.
well, the
closed.
construction dumpsters, real, in just how it actually works out is trash is thrown into those anyway.
Yeah.
You know, so on the ground, I don't know if there's anything you can do to address that, but in practicality, they all turn into.
It's already
trash dumpsters.
illegal to use somebody else's trash dumpster trash can.
I think even probably construction site workers. I don't know. I don't know.
Throw their
I couldn't
lunch
say
in
that.
there?
I guess I haven't seen it.
At the end of the day.
I've seen some outside of the city limits, some fairly remote dumpsters where I'm like, I don't think tourists are coming out here and just throwing their trash out there. I think construction workers, at the end of the day, throw their trash food. So it's kind of like you're inviting that stuff to happen. And I don't know what else you can, I have seen that they have these kind of like, grates. I don't know if you guys seen those, that they
Yeah.
can throw over the construction dumpsters. It'd be kind of
Yeah.
nice.
I have a cage on top of mine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that, no, it's fun.
yeah. If someone throws, if someone has thrown something in, it just sits on top of the grate, because they don't know. So I just, take it off and,
Yeah.
And Republic told me that Red Lodge is an area that when they deliver a dumpster, it has to have a lid.
Yep.
That's what Republic told me,
Up there, is this a lid or just a lid?
a lid. I just have a chain link fence on top of mine, essentially.
Have you had any
The
problems?
dumpsters at the grocery store all have, a method to secure the lid down. But bears are still they got skinny arms, they can still get in and.
Yeah, some of those are.
Tom Coons was saying that he has problems with the birds pulling out stuff
Yeah.
out of the trash,
Magpies.
and then, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what he said.
Yep.
I don't think we can solve,
Yeah,
Dan, your name's Dan, right?
Yep.
I'd be interested if the how the Gardner hardware store, if there's one, gets away with not selling bird feed.
I was just talking to our statewide, bear education gal, Danielle, about this. I think they still do probably. I
Okay.
don't think they don't sell bird feed. I've talked to our Ace
Okay,
about this, and Ace Hardwares are independently owned. So what we've talked about is, for those Ace Hardwares that are willing to adopt it, at a minimum, we put a QR code there, fed bears, dead bears sign, before people buy their bird seed. And then with that QR code, there's a video how to feed birds in bear country without feeding bears, or at a minimum, ideally don't feed them. If you are, here are some ways that you can do it, which electric fence, you can feed birds. I mean, it's not necessarily that bird seed is making a bear go off the creek bottom and then come into somebody's yard to come get it. If they're already there wandering, they get food near home and they go, oh, homes are a good place to get food. So if they get zapped by an electric fence when they're on their way, you solve that issue. So there are ways to do it, is what I'm saying. I don't know that you're ever gonna get Ace to stop selling it, but,
and it doesn't matter, you can buy it online, you can go to billing.
yeah,
So I don't think the availability, I like the idea of a sign there that says, you know, feed a bird, kill a bear,
Yeah.
or something to point out that this is a problem here.
Yeah,
And I like that, and I bet Ace would be more than willing to do that.
right.
Oh.
And if there's, yeah, I don't know. I,
They're not
when I
gonna make a
talked
ton
to,
of
when I
money off
talked
of
to,
bird feed.
when I talked to their manager, they said they would be. But again, if you're talking about independently owned, it depends. An Ace here might not be an Ace, and
Well, it might not be make a dent in the sales, but it gets people thinking.
That's where I was
Yeah,
going,
you know,
just think about it.
yeah. And you can still feed birds, you know, almost 6
On
months
your
of the
roof?
year. I mean, here in Red Lodge, December 1st to really, I mean, really March 1st, we say December 1st to March 1st. We hold on to our snow long enough. We're in Red Lodge. You know, there's some leeway there where you can feed birds for a long, and that's when they actually can use it the most, not in the middle of June when there's abundant food out for them.
yeah.
So there's ways to still feed birds.
Interesting.
I like that.
What about fine and penalty wise, anything other than disabling a can and not securing attractants? You need to
Well,
look at-
man, I don't know what, getting out of my pay grade, but
Purposely and knowingly doing it too.
I would say,
But there's a state code for that, and so I'm looking at it from a trash, we're focused on trash right now, so what rules do we need to have on trash? That not properly securing attractants covers a pretty wide net.
Seems like it covers it all, in city limits. You know, the big thing is when it comes to the vacation rentals, you guys probably talked about this before I got here. From my experience, I think you were talking about it when I just walked in, like AAA and the bigger vacation rental companies
Management.
do a very good job. They're serious about it. It's the independent owners that I've noticed are the hardest ones. You know, they live in Utah or something like that. They're like, I don't care if a bear gets in the trash. And they need to be, ultimately somehow realize that they're held accountable, not their renters. Even if it's a long-term rental, the owner is responsible for the proper storage. I don't know what you guys have in place right now, if that's already the case, but that's something I would be thinking about. How do
That's
you
why
make
we
sure-
were thinking fines.
Yeah,
Now, what was Courtney doing that, after she left she wasn't the one going around finding the trash cans?
no, so, how it was working in 23 is Sean Stewart, our, area biologist, he would walk in the morning, walk his dog, and he would send me pictures of addresses that, or homes that had cans tipped over. And I would take those pictures and the address, and I'd put it in an Excel sheet that was shared with the city. And Courtney would go in there, and she would send those people letters, which I'm working with Dave to get him a letter, when I have a spare moment to go through my emails. But, the letter that she sent out was just a pretty standard, you know, you
Secure your
want to
trash.
store your stuff, right? And at first I had my number in there, so then I had a lot of people call me at 9 PM mad about their trash, and eventually we took my number out of there. But it worked, it gets people pretty fired up, and you never had to find them, which ideally, you know, I would think that's what we want, is not to find people.
Right.
We just want them to fix the problem. So I'll track down that letter and get it to Dave, but that's pretty much all she's doing, is issuing those. They were like, man, I wish Courtney was here. I think there was like one or two that weren't compliant after they got the warning. And I don't know how many warnings off the top of my head were sent, but they were effective.
Any
Well,
other suggestions?
a form of neighborhood watch would help, maybe. I
Well,
don't
that's
know.
kind of what, you know, we're talking about with our
Yeah.
Fairware thing is having
You
something like
can,
that.
you don't have to, you can be anonymous, no one knows, but, you know,
Yep,
takes, you know, you've got to see it at the right time, and not, you've got to see when it happens, and, that always isn't the fact, how it happens, so.
yep. And, you know, we have Neighborhood Watch right now, just nobody knows that they're doing it. It's the Red Lodge Wildlife Sightings and the Red Lodge Buzz. People are posting this stuff all over, but not, you know, they mostly think it's cute, or they just think it's just another day in Red Lodge, and so it's not translating into any effective action. But if, you know, pie in the sky talk right now, but, and somehow we got it to where, you know, we're getting a bear where, I don't know, is that Facebook page up? No?
I don't know if Susan's got that, so,
Yeah,
I think it is, 'cause they have a name for it, but,
yeah, like Bearware, Beartooth or something like
Yeah.
that. But anyway, eventually we'll have a Facebook page going that can address some of that stuff, and when people are seeing this happening, they'll know, hey, this isn't good, we need to report this, instead of just me hoping I get a random report by some good citizen. So another problem is that because I just don't have the time, I mean, we could almost use a full-time bear technician just to patrol Red Lodge in the summer. Yeah,
But
you
have-
would make
So-
$12 an hour, sign up, but,
Have you noticed that they follow, like, in other words, they pick up my trash Thursday mornings and they pick up their trash Wednesday mornings, that's when the bears get used to the schedule?
probably, but, I mean, it's not that far. They don't have to have a schedule memorized to go, trash isn't here on this side of town, it could take them 10 minutes to walk to the other side of town, but what I was gonna say is that, one of the bigger problems is that I can't actually track any of these, because I don't have the time. And so, I don't have the time every morning. First of all, I've tried to get Republic to send me their trash schedule,
Hmm.
and I failed over and over again, so I gave up. But what I wanted to do was, in the mornings of pickup, drive, you know, the places in town that have everybody's got their trash set up, and then I could log how many cans are being, and we can see trends, all right, I've removed this many bears, and now I'm seeing less trash, you know, trash issues, whatever. So that, you know, again, the Bearware group, I think we'll be able to do some stuff like that.
we need to, we're at the time, we need to wrap this up for the next one. I did write down, you'll have the schedule of trash before the end of the day.
Okay.
The other thing I've added, so I've got disabling a can, not properly securing, is the tall grass has an anonymous form to report stuff in. We could do that if somebody sees trash and has a picture or stuff of that. Kind of the same stuff that was happening before, we could have people report that and log that, so that could be part of the ordinance as well, that we're gonna track it.
One thing I noticed in my neighborhood, where else would I notice it? But, people overload their garbage cans. And I would like Republic just to drive past them and say, we can't, because if it's, you know, garbage, it might be styrofoam on top, but underneath it's gonna be waste. But if Republic would not pick up, like they say they're not gonna pick up, then people would stop overloading their garbage cans.
Do they say they're not gonna
Well,
pick it
no, they don't actually say, and that wouldn't help our problem if they don't, because now the next week there's 2 weeks of trash there. But what we could do is have them report where it's not properly secured. They could report that to us. There's some locations, I wonder if if we have to require a second can just because they're consistently there.
Yeah,
I think that would help.
and the reporting,
But
I
they
thought
have
about
to
that.
pay for that.
They do.
Yep.
It's cheaper than the first can, but they still have to pay for that.
If you put garbage beside your can, they charge you for it.
No, actually, you're allowed, our contract is you're allowed
South of town, they do.
Oh, okay, yeah, here, it's actually in our contract that they'll do it, but that's supposed to be non-attractants, that's long clippings and stuff
Yeah.
there. But I think that not properly securing trash with attractants, I think that falls into that category.
Because that's not secure.
Is
Okay.
Republic held to a standard for how soon they react to a defective can?
They will be, so, yeah, we got their response and we're actually doing a new contract,
Oh,
so,
good, I wonder,
Good.
yeah.
okay. Anything else that we can possibly do as a city?
Because that's what really, I mean, the idea is good overall, but right now it's like focusing on a city.
You said there's a survey of cans being done to find.
They're gonna go around, basically what she's talking, they're gonna go around and say, this can's working, not working. And then actually, they're looking at all sorts of bear attractants. So like if they see a bird feeder
That's
or
the
they
committee
see,
that's doing it?
yeah,
Okay.
that's not the city, that's the volunteer
Is that the Bear
group.
Aware Committee?
Yep.
good.
So, all right, I think with those notes, we can come up with an ordinance for discussion next time to follow up.
That we could add on.
Now, you didn't, you threw out $100 once, I didn't hear any discussion on that.
I just thought that a $50 fine is minor, but $100 is like, oh.
And officers still have their, we don't have to put in there that they're gonna get a warning, 'cause an officer has their discretion. This is deliberate, you take your garbage can, you're getting a fine right now, versus, hey, you overflowed it, I'm gonna give you a warning.
Yeah, and I like that discretion. And that should be done through a resolution.
No, we just give them the ability to fine and they choose not to,
Okay,
right?
yeah. Are you okay with $100?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jay, I need to talk to you before you leave, I need to, because I'm taking notes here,
Okay.
just your information, so don't run away.
Dan, thanks for making time out of your day to come here today.
Yeah, I'm
Appreciate
sorry,
it.
sorry I was late.
Did I hear, by the way, that I didn't hear there was an appetite to making an ordinance that says no bird feeders, but I did hear that there's a state ordinance that if it's getting massively abused, that we can rely on.
I'm gonna pull
To
the
go there.
Gardner one to see how it's worded. I like the idea of making them illegal in the summer and making them in, between December 1st and March 1st, that they can, feed away, but it's unnecessary. Like Dan said, it's unnecessary to feed a bird in spring and summer when there's plenty of other food. We're actually, hurting them more than anything else.
The fact that somebody put one on their roof shows me how passionate people are
Yeah,
about feeding
yeah.
birds.
And-
I kind of respect it,
And this is America, we can educate, but
There's a lot to eat elsewhere.
but just going onto your roof.
Is it more about the birds, or does
I'd
it
like to
getting
make a
good shots
suggestion on
for
your
his camera?
dumpster
Okay.
section of it,
I mean,
okay,
that on construction sites, that they're required to have a bear-resistant container for attractants. Because
oh,
they're throwing their daily lunch bags into the dumpster. If they're required to have a bear-resistant container next to the dumpster for their
Oh, an extra.
daily trash.
And they
have-
good call.
My daughter's house, we were there every night picking up the trash because the workers would eat and just drop it where they got done with it. And we'd come away with a sack of trash every day, from just candy wrappers to, just things that bears are gonna lick. and-
Good thought.
And yum,
Yeah, that is a good point.
that's a great idea.
Yeah, I don't know if you were to do some ordinance for bird feeders, to get back to that real quick. There are ways, like I said, there are ways to store them that you could put in the ordinance unless secured properly, where people could still have their cake and eat it too,
Oh. Bird feeders are permitted provided, proper precautions are taken.
Yeah, properly
Okay.
secured is usually the terms we use.
How do you secure a bird feeder? Put it on the roof.
Electric fence around it.
Yeah.
They make bear
There's-
fences.
On the golf course, there's a guy that I worked with a couple years ago who was upset that bears were getting put down, and he had bird feeders, and he knew his problem. I put an electric fence, he did it, really. I showed him how to do it, and he put an electric fence up around the top of his actual 6-foot, privacy fence, and solved his bear coming into his yard. So there's ways to do it,
It was scaling a 6-foot privacy fence?
no problem.
And but it didn't damage the fence at all, huh? Wow.
It's hopping right over. Yeah.
What does that cost, and can people step over it, or how does an electric fence work? Just out of
Solar panels.
for bears? Do I just get close to it and I get a buzz, or do they touch it and go out?
They touch it, and
Okay.
then they'll shock them, and then, yeah, there's ways to do it improperly. It's not a horse fence, so you can't just put one hot wire and then it works. It might work for some bears, but you really need a hot and a ground alternating. They need to hit both of them to receive a full shock.
Does it work on golfers?
I can't
Not
speak on,
golf
I'm not a
balls.
golfer, so I can't speak on that.
maybe when the audio's
We need to
over,
wrap
you
this.
can tell us the address of this fella, and we, a couple of us can go out there and talk to him about it, but.
I don't remember, that was 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I probably have it in my notes somewhere.
Okay, all right, but it
But-
would be
but-
interesting to see his setup.
Yeah.
So if you do the bird feeders, you don't say no, you just add some additional responsibilities. If you're gonna have a bird feeder, you need
Yeah.
to take the following
Hey,
precautions.
do we have, are we allowed to have chickens in town?
No,
No, educational chickens.
it means
Like up at
for
the high
educational purposes.
Yeah, you have- You can, no, you can have you can have a chicken for educational purposes.
They used to have chickens up at the high school.
Raccoons or something
Yeah.
too.
That's why it
Yeah.
was passed.
That's,
Skunk.
so like a lot of places, they do,
Yeah.
if you have chicken coops, you're required to have an electric fence around it
Okay.
to do that, so.
Good deal. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go
Okay.
ahead and wrap up this meeting.
Fox
Adjourn.
too, in the middle of the day. So
Thank
where we
you.
are
Thank you,
right
Dan.
now, there's a, I mean, we're